The Cannonball Run wasn't just a movie, it was a chaotic circus on wheels. Born from a real underground race, it became a Hollywood free-for-all with half-read scripts, improvised stunts, and questionable legality. Dean Martin showed up with a cocktail, Burt Reynolds pocketed a fat paycheck, and Jackie Chan treated it like a stunt reel. Here are 20 wild facts, starting with the real race that inspired it all. Number 1. Before there was a movie, there was the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash, a no-rules coast-to-coast sprint dreamed up by journalist Brock Yates in 1971. The goal? Drive from New York to Los Angeles as fast as possible, government speed limits be damned. Cars ranged from Ferraris to beat-up vans, drivers wore disguises, and fake medical crews were a common trick to dodge police. It wasn't a publicity stunt, it was a protest against what Yates saw as America's war on driving. By the late 70s, 5 races had been run, and Hollywood couldn't resist turning that madness into a comedy. Number 2. Brock Yates didn't just invent the cannonball, he raced it himself. His most famous run, piloting a Dodge tradesman ambulance, complete with flashing lights and a patient in the back. The ruse worked almost too well. State troopers waved them through, thinking they were on an emergency run. In reality, the medical crew was just Yates, a buddy, and his wife, who played along in the back. That same ambulance later became a star in the movie, driven by Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. On screen it was a joke, in real life it was one of the race's greatest scams. Number 3. In 1981, Burt Reynolds was Hollywood royalty. Fresh off Smokey and the Bandit, he didn't need another car chase flick. But director Hal Needham was his friend, the paycheck was enormous, and the shoot promised a laid-back vibe. Reynolds showed up, cracked a few jokes, and treated the whole thing like a vacation. He admitted later that he barely looked at the script and didn't care about the final cut. When he finally saw it, he called it one of his worst films. Audiences disagreed. The movie was a hit. Reynolds learned the hard way that sometimes chaos sells better than craft. Number 4. Farrah Fawcett signed on thinking the Cannonball Run would be a fast-paced drama with romantic tension. She studied her character, picked outfits for emotional beats, and came prepared. Then day 1 happened. Dean Martin stumbled on set dressed as a priest, cocktail in hand, trading communion jokes with Sammy Davis Jr. Farrah realized she'd wandered into a slapstick circus, not a serious film. Her confusion is visible on screen. She plays it straight while everyone else is in on the joke. Ironically, that sincerity made her performance one of the movie's most memorable, even if it wasn't the movie she expected. Number 5. That Dodge ambulance wasn't built for the movie. It was the movie before the movie. Brock Yates and Hal Needham drove it in the real Cannonball, faking an emergency trip across the country. They used fake IV drips, a pretend heart monitor, and a very convincing patient to keep the cops off their tail. It worked, mostly. The race ended when the engine died outside Palm Springs. Years later, Needham dusted off the same ambulance for Burt Reynolds to drive on screen. It wasn't just a prop. It was a living piece of outlaw history disguised as a sight gag. Number 6. The wisecracking, fast-talking priest Fenderbaum was originally meant for insult comedy legend Don Rickles. He signed on, was set to shoot, and then vanished. Accounts differ. Scheduling conflict, creative clash, or maybe Rickles just didn't want to deal with the chaos. Producers scrambled and called Sammy Davis Jr., who jumped in last minute. Paired with Dean Martin, Sammy turned the role into pure Rat Pack mischief, part holy man, part hustler. The chemistry was perfect, and the banter felt lived in. In the end, losing Rickles might have been the best accident that happened to the Cannonball Run. Number 7. Martin and Davis weren't just playing priests with bad habits, they brought those habits to set. Known for their love of a good drink, the pair often arrived late, improvised dialogue, and turned scenes into comedy free-for-alls. Hal Needham didn't try to rein them in. He knew you couldn't script that kind of chaos. One take had Sammy slurring so badly the audio had to be redone, while Martin poured himself another mid-scene. In any other movie, it might have been a disaster. Here, it was the vibe. Cannonball wasn't about polish, it was about capturing lightning in a bottle. Number 8. Roger Moore didn't play James Bond in the Cannonball Run, but he played Seymour Goldfarb Jr., a rich playboy who thought he was James Bond. He drove an Aston Martin DB5, wore tuxedos, and delivered spy one-liners like he'd just stepped off a 707 set. The parody was so on the nose that the real Bond producers were furious. They couldn't shut it down, but they made sure no future Bond actor could spoof the role again. Moore didn't care. He called it one of his most fun shoots, and it marked the last time an official Bond would parody himself on screen. Number 9. Not every Cannonball Run stunt ended in laughter. Heidi von Beltz, a young stunt woman, was a passenger during a scene involving a staged crash. The seatbelt in her car wasn't installed properly. When the car hit a truck, she was thrown forward and left permanently paralyzed. The tragedy led to lawsuits and became a turning point for Hollywood stunt safety. From then on, seatbelts were mandatory in all stunt vehicles, and last-minute stunt changes were prohibited by the Directors Guild. The movie may be remembered for its comedy, but behind the scenes, it left a mark that shaped filmmaking for decades. Number 10. Jackie Chan treated the Cannonball Run like a showcase. He performed lightning-fast fight scenes, wall flips, and stunts that had nothing to do with the script, just pure skill. But American editors didn't know what to do with him. His fight sequences were cut short or trimmed because they felt too intense for a comedy. Jackie was disappointed, but those brief scenes introduced him to US audiences. Within a decade, he went from scene stealer to box office headliner. In hindsight, the cuts didn't matter. Cannonball may have been a comedy, but it gave Hollywood its first taste of Jackie's genius. Number 11. The Cannonball Run script was less a blueprint and more a polite suggestion. Hal Needham kept pages on hand but treated them like napkin notes, happy to throw them out if a funnier line popped up. Actors often arrived without knowing what scene they'd shoot that day, and entire exchanges were improvised while the cameras rolled. Dom DeLuise admitted half his lines were made up on the spot. Farrah Fawcett claimed she never saw a full script from start to finish. It wasn't careful filmmaking, it was a comedy freefall, and somehow that unplanned chaos made the laughs feel real. Number 12. When the credits rolled, most movies fade to black. Not the Cannonball Run. Instead, audiences got a full blooper reel, botched stunts, flubbed lines, and actors laughing themselves silly. It felt like the party never stopped, even when the cameras did. Jackie Chan, who was new to American filmmaking, was fascinated. In Hong Kong, bloopers weren't shown to audiences. But he loved the honesty. The idea that mistakes could be part of the entertainment. Starting with his 1982 film Dragon Lord, Jackie made blooper reels a permanent part of his brand, and it all began with one chaotic car comedy. The low-flying Learjet skimming over a narrow road looked insane, because it was. There were no miniature models, no clever editing, it was an actual plane flying under FAA radar. The stunt was done in one nerve-wracking take, with the pilot threading the aircraft through dangerously close clearances. When federal authorities caught wind, they didn't laugh. An investigation followed, and the production faced warnings for pulling off what could easily have been a fatal stunt. Hal Needham reportedly downplayed the whole thing, framing it as a little camera trick. In truth, it was pure daredevil recklessness, and it barely avoided criminal charges. In the film, Jackie Chan plays a gadget-obsessed racer with martial arts skills. Sounds fine, until the credits rolled and labeled him as Japanese. Chan, a proud Chinese actor, took it as both lazy and disrespectful. At the time, he had little influence in Hollywood, so he swallowed his frustration. But privately, it fueled his determination to control how his image was presented in future films. Despite the mislabel, Jackie still gave a standout performance, doing his own stunts and hitting every beat. Years later, when he had worldwide fame, he made sure nobody in Hollywood would make that mistake again. One downtown Las Vegas chase scene involved squealing tires, mock gunfire, and stunt drivers whipping through traffic. The problem? No one told the local cops. Real officers saw what looked like an active crime in progress and sped in, sirens blaring. For a few tense minutes, the Cannonball Run went from a staged chase to a genuine police pursuit. Crew members scrambled, actors froze, and someone finally yelled, "Cut!" loud enough to stop the chaos. After some fast talking, the cops let them go with a warning, "Don't do that again." Hal Needham naturally went right back to shooting the same day. Dom DeLuise's alter ego, Captain Chaos, was supposed to be Burt Reynolds' goofy sidekick. But DeLuise kept breaking character mid-scene, gasping for breath between fits of laughter. Burt often played the straight man, rolling his eyes while DeLuise fell apart. Hal Needham initially tried reshoots, but quickly realized that genuine laughter was funnier than the scripted jokes. So he left it in. Watch closely and you'll see Burt and Dom cracking up for real in multiple scenes. It's not acting, it's two friends enjoying the absurdity of the movie they're in, and it became one of the film's most lovable traits. In 1986, Japanese game designer Yu Suzuki saw the Cannonball Run and felt inspired. He didn't just see a movie about racing, he saw freedom. The open road, sun on your face, wind in your hair. That feeling became Outrun, the now iconic arcade game. You weren't racing for trophies, you were escaping into a dream of endless highways in a red Ferrari with a beautiful passenger beside you. No laps, no rules, just pure motion. It's one of the most beloved driving games in history, and its DNA traces back to a chaotic Hollywood comedy about breaking all the rules. Halfway through the movie, a cop pulls over a Lamborghini. Freeze the frame, the officer looks a lot like Burt Reynolds. That's because it's his stunt double, Roy Tatum. He was just visiting the set when someone suggested he play a quick-bit role. The resemblance was so uncanny that even crew members mistook him for Reynolds during filming. One producer reportedly gave him a full scene briefing before realizing the mix-up. It became a subtle Easter egg for eagle-eyed fans, and proof that Cannonball was a production where even the visitors might end up in front of the camera. The slick red Ferrari 308 GTS, driven by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., wasn't a studio prop. It was Hal Needham's personal car. A real stuntman's ride, tuned and ready for serious driving. Needham casually handed over the keys without an insurance waiver or backup plan. During filming, the car came dangerously close to guardrails, suffered tire burns, and took a few door scrapes. Hal didn't flinch. For him, the Cannonball Run wasn't about faking the ride, it was about living it. In a film where so much was real, letting the stars drive his own Ferrari fit perfectly. Studios usually wait to see how a movie performs before ordering a sequel. Not with the Cannonball Run. Midway through filming, executives saw the dailies and were convinced they had a hit. The laughter in test screenings sealed the deal. Without a finished edit or even a full script, the Cannonball Run 2 was greenlit. It was a risky move, but the first movie's box office proved them right. For the studio, this wasn't just a race across America, it was a race to cash in before the engines cooled. And in true Cannonball fashion, speed was everything. The Cannonball Run was reckless, hilarious, and unforgettable, a wild ride that broke rules and made history. In true Cannonball style, it crossed the finish line grinning, engine roaring, and chaos in its wake.